Krishna, Hare Hare Krishna devotees, this is my humble obeisances of Srila Prabhupada. Welcome to devotees to our evening Bhagavad Gita circle. This evening we will be continuing with chapter 2, verse 41, and the topic is the Gita summarized, and it will be read and explained and shared and discussed by Mother Gita from ISKCON Atlanta. Hare Krishna, Mother, please accept my humble obeisances of Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances of Srila Prabhupada.
And it's all yours, Mother. Thank you.
Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pistaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschate Disatharine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jadvaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Continuing with Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 2, text number 41. Yavasatmika buddhi eke guru nandana bahushakaya nantascha buddhayo vyavasainam. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Those who are on this path are resolute in purpose, and their aim is one. O beloved child of the Kurus, the intelligence of those who are irresolute is many-branched. Purport. A strong faith that by Krishna consciousness one will be elevated to the highest perfection of life is called Vyavasatmika intelligence. The Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela 22.62 states, Shraddha Shabde Vishwas Kahe Sudhrada Nishchaya Krishna Bhakti Kaile Sarva Karma Kritahaya. Faith means unflinching trust in something sublime. When one is engaged in the duties of Krishna consciousness, he need not act in relationship to the material world with obligations to family, traditions, humanity, or nationality. Fruitive activities are the engagements of one's reactions from past good or bad deeds. When one is awake in Krishna consciousness, he need no longer endeavor for good results in his activities. When one is situated in Krishna consciousness, all activities are on the absolute plane, for they are no longer subject to dualities like good and bad. The highest perfection of Krishna consciousness is renunciation of the material conception of life. This state is automatically achieved by progressive Krishna consciousness. The resolute purpose of a person in Krishna consciousness is based on knowledge. Vasudevaha sarvam iti sa mahatma sudurlabhaha. A person in Krishna consciousness is the rare good soul who knows perfectly that Vasudev or Krishna is the root of all manifested causes. As by watering the root of a tree, one automatically distributes water to the leaves and branches, so by acting in Krishna consciousness, one can render the highest service to everyone, namely self, family, society, country, humanity, etc. If Krishna is satisfied by one's actions, then everyone will be satisfied. Service in Krishna consciousness is, however, best practiced under the able guidance of a spiritual master who is a bona fide representative of Krishna, who knows the nature of the student and who can guide him to act in Krishna consciousness. As such, to be well versed in Krishna consciousness, one has to act firmly and obey the representative of Krishna, and one should accept the instruction of the bona fide spiritual master as one's mission in life. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur instructs us in his famous prayers for the spiritual master as follows. Yasya prasadat bhagavate prasado, yasya prasadana gati kutopi, dhyayan stuvams tasya yashastri sandhyam, vande guru shri charanarvindam. By satisfaction of the spiritual master, the Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes satisfied. And by not satisfying the spiritual master, there is no chance of being promoted to the plane of Krishna consciousness. I should, therefore, meditate and pray for his mercy 3 times a day and offer my respectful obeisances unto him, my spiritual master. The whole process, however, depends on perfect knowledge of the soul beyond the conception of the body, not theoretically, but practically, when there is no longer a chance for sense gratification manifested in fruitive activities. One who is not firmly fixed in mind is diverted by various types of fruitive acts. Text 42 and 43. Yamimam pushpitam vacham pravadante avipaschitaha vedavadarata partha nanyad astitivadinaha kamatmanaha swargapara janma karma phala pradam kriya vishesha bahulam bhogeshwarya gatim prati. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Men of small knowledge are very much attached to the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend various fruitive activities for elevation to heavenly planets, result in good birth, power, and so forth. Being desirous of sense gratification and opulent life, they say that there is nothing more than this. Purport. People in general are not very intelligent. And due to their ignorance, they are most attached to the fruitive activities recommended in the Karma Kanda portions of the Vedas. They do not want anything more than sense gratificatory proposals for enjoying life in heaven, where wine and women are available and material opulence is very common. In the Vedas, many sacrifices are recommended for elevation to the heavenly planets, especially Jyotistuma sacrifices. In fact, it is stated that anyone desiring elevation to heavenly planets must perform these sacrifices, and men with a poor fund of knowledge think that this is the whole purpose of Vedic wisdom. It is very difficult for such inexperienced persons to be situated in the determined action of Krishna consciousness. As fools are attached to the flowers of poisonous trees without knowing the results of such attractions, unenlightened men are similarly attracted by such heavenly opulence and the sense enjoyment thereof. In the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas, it is said, Apama somam amrita abhumam and akshayam havai chaturmasya yajnaha sukritam bhavati. In other words, those who perform the 4-month penances become eligible to drink the somaras beverages to become immortal and happy forever. Even on this earth, some are very eager to have somaras to become strong and fit to enjoy sense gratifications. Such persons have no faith in liberation from material bondage, and they are very much attached to the pompous ceremonies of Vedic sacrifices. They are generally sensual, and they do not want anything other than the heavenly pleasures of life. It is understood that there are gardens called Nandana Kanana, in which there is good opportunity for association with angelic, beautiful women and having a profuse supply of somaras wine. Such bodily happiness is certainly sensual. Therefore, there are those who are purely attached to such material, temporary happiness as lords of the material world. Text 44. Bhogeshwarya prasaktanam taya prata chetasam vyavasatmika buddhihi samadhauna vidhiyate. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. In the minds of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence, and who are bewildered by such things, the resolute determination for devotional service to the Supreme Lord does not take place. Purport. Samadhi means fixed mind. The Vedic dictionary, the Nirukti, says, Samyag adhiyate smin atma tattva yathamyam. When the mind is fixed for understanding the self, it is said to be in samadhi. Samadhi is never possible for persons interested in material sense enjoyments and bewildered by such temporary things. They are more or less condemned by the process of material energy. Text 45. Tregunya Vishaya Veda Nistregunyo Bhavarjuna Nirdvandvo Nitya Sattvastho Niryogakshema Atmavan. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Vedas deal mainly with the subject of the 3 modes of material nature. O Arjun, become transcendental to these 3 modes. Be free from all dualities and from all anxieties for gain and safety, and be established in the self. Purport. All material activities involve actions and reactions in the 3 modes of material nature. They are meant for fruitive results, which cause bondage in the material world. The Vedas deal mostly with fruitive activities to gradually elevate the general public from the field of sense gratification to a position on the transcendental plane. Arjuna, as a student and friend of Lord Krishna, is advised to raise himself to the transcendental position of Vedanta philosophy, where in the beginning there is Brahma Jignasa, or questions on the supreme transcendence. All the living entities who are in the material world are struggling very hard for existence. For them, the Lord, after creation of the material world, gave the Vedic wisdom advising how to live and get rid of the material entanglement. When the activities for sense gratification, namely the Karmakanda chapter, are finished, then the chance for spiritual realization is offered in the form of the Upanishads, which are part of different Vedas, as the Bhagavad Gita is a part of the fifth Veda, namely the Mahabharata. The Upanishads mark the beginning of transcendental life. As long as the material body exists, there are actions and reactions in the material modes. One has to learn tolerance in the face of duality, such as happiness and distress, or cold and warmth, and by tolerating such dualities, become free from anxieties regarding gain and loss. This transcendental position is achieved in full Krishna consciousness when one is fully dependent on the goodwill of Krishna. Text 46. Yavan artha udapane sarvataha samplutudake tavan sarveshu vedeshu brahmanasya vijanataha. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. All purposes served by a small well can at once be served by a great reservoir of water. Similarly, all the purposes of the Vedas can be served to one who knows the purpose behind them. Purport. The rituals and sacrifices mentioned in the Karmakanda division of the Vedic literature are meant to encourage gradual development of self-realization. And the purpose of the self-realization is clearly stated in the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, 15.15. The purpose of studying the Vedas is to know Lord Krishna, the primeval cause of everything. So, self-realization means understanding Krishna and one's eternal relationship with him. The relationship of the living entities with Krishna is also mentioned in the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, 15.7. The living entities are parts and parcels of Krishna. Therefore, revival of Krishna consciousness by the individual living entity is the highest perfectional stage of Vedic knowledge. This is confirmed in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 33, verse 7 as follows. Aho bata swapachoto gariyan yad jivakre vartate nama tubhyam te pus tapas te juhuho snur arya brahmanuchur nama grananti yete. O my Lord, a person who is chanting your holy name, although born of a low family like that of a Chandala or dog eater, is situated on the highest platform of self-realization. Such a person must have performed all kinds of penances and sacrifices according to Vedic rituals and studied the Vedic literatures many, many times after taking his bath in all the holy places of pilgrimage. Such a person is considered to be the best of the Aryan family. So one must be intelligent enough to understand the purpose of the Vedas without being attached to the rituals only, and must not desire to be elevated to the heavenly kingdoms for a better quality of sense gratification. It is not possible for the common man in this age to follow all the rules and regulations of the Vedic rituals, nor is it possible to study all of the Vedanta and the Upanishads thoroughly. It requires much time, energy, knowledge, and resources to execute the purposes of the Vedas. This is hardly possible in this age. The best purpose of Vedic culture is served, however, by chanting the holy name of the Lord as recommended by Lord Chaitanya, the deliverer of all fallen souls. When Lord Chaitanya was asked by a great Vedic scholar, Prakashananda Saraswati, why he, the Lord, was chanting the holy name of the Lord like a sentimentalist instead of studying Vedanta philosophy, the Lord replied that his spiritual master had found him to be a great fool and thus asked him to chant the holy name of Lord Krishna. He did so and became ecstatic like a madman. In this age of Kali, most of the population is foolish and not adequately educated to understand Vedanta philosophy. The best purpose of Vedanta philosophy is served by inoffensively chanting the holy name of the Lord. Vedanta is the last word in Vedic wisdom, and the author and knower of the Vedanta philosophy is Lord Krishna. And the highest Vedantist is the great soul who takes pleasure in chanting the holy name of the Lord. That is the ultimate purpose of all Vedic mysticism. I'll end here. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Mother Gita, for such a wonderful reading and a lot of amazing points by Srila Prabhupada. It's interesting. The more we read this, the more we have more questions each time. We'd like to open up for questions from devotees. If you have any questions, any comments, any clarification, please do jump right in or raise your hand and we will call upon you. I have a question, but I want to just give others a chance to ask if they have a question. Anyone has a question? Go ahead,
Hare Krishna,
Bhakti.
Mother Gita, accept my humble obeisances, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Mother Gita, I always like to, just fixate on the language Prabhupada uses in the verses you read. He just doesn't use, use the terms, being situated in our Krishna consciousness. He says, we must be determined action for Krishna consciousness and progressive Krishna consciousness, a forward-moving mindset, even when facing, all these dualities as you read. But Mother Gita, my question is, within our relationships, we find that, devotees and non-devotees alike, some individuals may just be, too caught up in the mind and too sure of themselves. And even in our interactions and our communication, they might, have that veil covering their mind and they just don't want to, listen with clarity. And we make ourselves available, we make ourselves shelter for these devotees, but at a point, there may be where we're just repeating ourselves, and then we find that our trying to help devotees can become an impediment in our own spiritual life, because we become so soft-hearted for the individual. We just want to help, but we can't help this devotee. So is there, in this progressive consciousness, is there any validity to letting go and letting God, as we say in the Krishna faith? We've been seeing the Bhagavad Gita that says, the Lord ultimately will help those who help themselves, just as the sparrow trying to drink the water from the ocean. So how can we navigate, even though there are these impediments in Krishna consciousness and devotees may be closed up, how can we still, want to help them, even though we can't? And, should we come to a point where we do let go and we let God?
Yes, this is quite common. It's, we find this. And you're right, your first point about how Srila Prabhupada, explains in his purpose, like the words that he uses. When I was reading, I was in my mind saying, wow, what beautiful words he's using and the way he's explaining it. And I lost count of how many times he said Krishna consciousness in all these verses and the purpose, so many times. So being conscious of Krishna is the sum and substance of what Srila Prabhupada has taught us through his books. And yes, you're right. We do come across some devotees, whom you can kind of say that you're breaking your head on the wall, kind of not getting anywhere. But we still should be compassionate and try. But at the same time, excuse me, at the same time, we need to take care of our Krishna consciousness also. In other words, I feel that, we should charge our spiritual batteries from time to time. Like I always use this excuse with my husband that I need to go to India, to Vrindavan, to charge my spiritual batteries, to go there to that holy place. Of course, we can make our own home also a place of pilgrimage, where we have this beautiful temple. We are doing deity worship. We are chanting attentively, reading Srila Prabhupada's books, doing seva in the temple, associating with devotees. So that place also is like a place of pilgrimage. So charging our own spiritual batteries is very, very important, because just like, the batteries, they start getting discharged spiritually, sometimes we also start getting discharged. So associating with advanced devotees, that helps us to charge our spiritual batteries. And then also important to understand that we do our duty towards other devotees, like showing compassion, showing them the way that, like helping them in their Krishna consciousness, but not look at the results of our endeavors. Leave that to Krishna, because Krishna is in their hearts too, and Krishna is there to guide them. And it's up to each individual devotee, whether they want to take that guidance or they don't want to take. They make the choice. But we do our duty and then kind of detach ourselves, in the sense we don't bog ourselves down, to the results. What are the results of our interaction with them? I hope that helps.
Absolutely, Mother Gita. But just to follow up on that, is there a point where, as you said, we're just not getting through to a devotee, and we don't want to ourselves experience this burnout. We do need to recharge. So is there, I find with some devotees there may be come a point where you just have to step back and either let this devotee know that, hey, I really don't know what else to do for you. Maybe I can, maybe you should talk to another devotee, or maybe I can, suggest another devotee to you, because at this point, it might become an impediment on both of our spiritual lives. Like things aren't just getting through to you. So, is there, and I don't want to ever look at that as like a giving up point. Like I don't ever want a devotee to think, oh, just because I can't help this devotee, or if I'm part of this situation, I've failed them in my Krishna consciousness. But, we do have that parampara, we do have our sadhu sangha to go back to, and we can't always be, the savior for a certain individual.
Mm-hmm. What I do is I give 3 chances. This is just a random number. I will, if I'm asked for guidance, I will guide, and, I will, with whatever knowledge I have and experience, I will, try to help, and I would try and try and try, maybe 3 or 4 times. And then when I see that, that it's not really helping, or that devotee is probably not ready to accept. There are some devotees who like to ask the same question to different devotees, to kind of 2 reasons. One is to see if the answers match, and also to choose the answer they like from that. So if they ask the same question to 4 devotees, they'll pick the one that suits them the most. And that might not, because it's based on time, place, and circumstance. Like for instance, if a student in the 2nd grade will ask me a question, my answer to that student will be different than someone who's in high school, because their level of understanding is different. So that's how we also, talk to the other devotees, or deal with them, or, communicate with them based on their level. So, but then I personally would, try 3 or 4 times. And then if I see that it's not really going anywhere, then I would definitely suggest maybe you can talk to someone else, or, try to help them, guide them to someone else, because sometimes what happens, we are after all human beings, and sometimes the personalities clash. We may be good at heart, the other devotee may be good at heart, but somehow the personalities don't, get on together. So then we guide them to someone else, and that's what I do. So.
Thank you so much, Mother Geeta. I could keep talking to you, but I don't want to take up time from other devotees. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
If you want to, you can always reach out to Mother Geeta, Bhakta Bread, if you need to. I have her contact. If Mother Geeta will give me the permission to share.
Absolutely.
I would love that. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Mother
Yeah.
Dasi. Thank you, Mother Geeta.
You're welcome. Any questions from devotees? Any comments that you would like to share? Any clarification that has risen in your mind from this wonderful, amazing reading? And it's a very nice catch that Bhakta Bread and Mother Geeta brought up. How many times Srila Prabhupada mentioned the word Krishna consciousness, and how many times he spoke with such confidence and determination. It wasn't like you may, if, maybe. It's like clear. Was very, very clear. So thank you for having us be aware of that. Mother, I have a question, Mother, and in the first in the verse that you're reading, chapter 2, verse 41, and Srila Prabhupada mentioned in the purport, faith means unflinching trust. Trust is a challenge for some people to develop. Because if for Prabhupada to say that faith means unflinching trust, so that means we have to build the trust to go to the next level of faith. That's pretty deep for me. Like, it was like, wow, I never could, it didn't hit me this way. So how can one develop unflinching trust, Mother, to go to the next level of building faith?
It starts with communication and association. So just like Rupa Goswami, says, 6 things that are favorable. One is to reveal our mind. So that stage will come after a little bit of trust is built, and that will happen only when there is some, communication, some association, quite a bit of association. Say, for instance, if I want to, Anusya, I want to, have trust in you, then I have to make that effort to get in touch with you, talk to you, emails or phone calls or video calls or Zoom, whatever it may be, or if in person, talk, and then kind of gradually build the trust. And also on the other side, for instance, if I want to build a trust, in you, then on your side, you do your part too, to be open to the communication, to be honest, and of course, Krishna conscious, have a good sadhana, because all these are requirements. And then gradually with the communications, the friendship starts building up. And then with some, what you can say, some instances or some, I wouldn't say episodes, but some incidents may happen, like, okay, there is a Rath Yatra, and then, we work together, to do some seva. So this is how the relationship starts building, and then gradually the trust develops. And then once the trust develops, then we have to bring it to unflinching, which means nothing can change. So if we both of us, we have unflinching trust with each other, then say if Brett says something to you about me, nothing should change that trust, right? So it's like, that's unflinching. It doesn't change. And nothing can change it. It doesn't matter who or what happens. So it's a gradual progression, gradual. But then we have to make that effort.
Thank you so much, Mother. That was powerful.
Sure.
Thank you so much. Any other questions from devotees? Any other comments, thoughts or reflection found this really amazing reading, powerful. Srila Prabhupada, it's just amazing.
And
If
so in
there
some
are-
cases, he's talking about chanting. He's talking about Krishna consciousness, but in the last one, he says inoffensively chanting. And that's where Srila Prabhupada, always, recommended that we read the 10 offenses in the mornings before we start chanting to remind us, and the 11th offense is to not pay attention while chanting. So that's also an offense, because if the chanting is offensive, then the progression in Krishna consciousness is kind of hampered, or you can call it slowed down. I mean, there is benefit, but not like there would be in inoffensive chanting. So,
Thank you, Mother.
mhm.
Dear Krishna, please go
Hare
ahead. with
Krishna,
your-
Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to you. Thank you so much, Mataji, for wonderful reading. I was just wanted to just share this section in the 2.45, where Srila Prabhupada mentions that one has to learn tolerance in the face of dualities. So sometimes we as devotees think, as soon as we start chanting or perform some service, magic will happen and all miseries will go away. But what Srila Prabhupada is saying, no, you have to do your part to learn and tolerate, and then you will become transcendental to all those dualities of life. So something that, although we might have read it so many times, but it was just hitting too hard, after you read it today. Thank you so much, Mataji.
Thank you. Thank you for an important point. When you were talking about tolerance, I was thinking about the verse from the Bhagavad Gita itself. It says, Matra sparshas tu kantaya, shitoshana sukha dukkadaha agama paina. That's tams titikshasva bharata. We must learn to tolerate. As remembering, do we have time to relate a story? Okay. So there was this Brahman who used to live near a holy river, and every morning he would go to bathe in that holy river. He would chant his mantras, and then he would come back and then continue his spiritual activities. So one day, as he was coming back after his bath, there was this gentleman who was very envious of this Brahmana, and he started spitting on him. And so the Brahmana, he just smiled, he turned around, and he went back into the holy river to bathe again, because, it's considered the body becomes unclean, because this person started spitting on him. So then he went, took his bath, and he came back, and again this person did the same thing, and this went on, and this Brahmana just smiled, turned around, went back to dip himself in the holy river, come back, smile, go back, like that. So then this man got tired of spitting, and he stopped him and he said, what's wrong with you? How are you able to, aren't you getting angry at me? Don't you feel like hitting me or something? He said, no, I'm very grateful to you. Because of you, for the first time in my life, I took 108 dips in the holy river because of you. Otherwise, every day, it was just once a day. So I'm very grateful. Now, how was he able to think in those terms, like not get upset? Tolerance. He was a Brahmana. Brahmana means one of the qualities is to be tolerant. So he was tolerant. So tolerance definitely is, I would say, a necessity in progressing in Krishna consciousness. Patience, utsaha, nischaya, dhairya, enthusiasm, tolerance, patience, determination, all these are requirements. So thank you, Prabhu, for that point on tolerance.
That was a really nice point. Thank you, Dear Krishna, for bringing that up.
Mhm.
Any other last points or questions, any comments, food for thought that you would like to add to this really, really, really sweet discussion? If there isn't, want to thank devotees for joining us. Vanchakapatubhyascha kripasindovevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you so much, Mother Gita, for such a wonderful reading and discussion. Hare
Thank you.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Have a wonderful evening, devotees.